Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Moment. Today is a big day. This is the day that Dr. Tim Barber and my book, 10 Years in the Making, Expressly Human Decoding the Language of Emotion, launches. It's now officially available at all your standard bookstores. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today was I've been remiss at explaining what emotional expressions mean, despite this book being about the origins of emotional expressions. One might mistakenly believe that when we're talking about emotional expressions, that we're only talking about, the emotional expressions on the face, or the gestures, or the intonation of voice, or the color modulations on the skin. That's what we evolved color vision for, an earlier discovery of mine. But look, really, one of the most important things about our grand unifying theory of emotional expressions in this book is that what we provide is a kind of like a periodic table of emotional expressions for each of this two-dimensional space of 81 qualitatively distinct emotional expressions. We tell you what it means in straight old English, in negotiation terms. It's like a lookup table that says, okay, in a negotiation, when someone is asking for this or demanding for this or backing down and being conciliatory in this way, when all different kinds of things that go on in a negotiation, here's the equivalent emotional expression that conveys that, or the other way around. For any particular emotional expression, we unpack or decode what it means in English in negotiation terms. So, all the time, when you're doing texting, when you're on social media, sometimes you're using explicitly emotional terms, but even when you're not, almost always you are engaged in arguments, in persuasive arguments, saying, no, Doug, I think you're wrong, and it's actually this. And then Doug says, no, here's why I think you're doubly wrong. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I didn't use any emotional words there, right? All that one person said is that I think you're wrong. The other person says, here's reasons for why I think you're super wrong. And then maybe the other person comes back and says, okay, actually, I get what you're saying, and now I get it a little bit. And so they were a little bit conciliatory, a little bit respectful, let's say, there. And they've pulled a little bit of chips off the table, we would say. Each of these emotional expressions corresponds to the negotiation talk. Each kind of negotiation talk corresponds to an emotional expression. And any of these also corresponds to a bet of reputation. This is why when poker players are playing, I have my hidden cards. You don't know what they are, and you have your hidden cards. And without ever speaking, now here we're not doing it in English, and here we're not doing it with emotional expressions, but we're still involved in emotionally expressing. Why? Because I push in chips. I push in chips, and that conveys confidence. Confidence that my hand is stronger than your hand. In fact, that's the only thing a bet. The only reason we ever bet is to convey confidence, which is an emotion. It's an emotional expression. Whether you're betting, in this case betting reputation, when you say something confidently, or whether you're saying negotiation-like stuff in English, which is what all of Twitter and Facebook is mostly filled with, except for memes and some visual kinds of things. They're mostly still filled with English, often with negotiation-related, persuasive kinds of arguments, pushing or being conciliatory or getting serious. All of these things are still emotional expressions, right? We're just doing emotional expressions in the way that we can now do that. We now don't need to have all of the evocativeness on the face, the intonations of the voice, the gestures, and so forth. We can just do it with language all by itself, even without emotion terms in it. We still do it. Animals, and us up before a couple 100,000 years ago, before we had spoken language, we had no choice but to negotiate using the only language that we had available, which was our emotional expressions, which amount to bets of reputations. But we're still doing that today. And it occurred to me, I'm starting to do a lot of podcasts and video casts and so forth for the book. I've often talked about a lot of the ways that we think about language is that language is the important thing, and then there's a little bit of whipped cream of emotion on top, the intonation and so forth. But really it gets things backwards. The real emotion, the real communication system that we've evolved over millions of years, over tens of millions of years, social animals generally, is our emotional expressive negotiation communication system. And even now that we speak, and even now that we have language, not only are we often still throwing the intonation on top and all the emotional expressions and showing it on our faces, so even when we're not able to do that because it's on text, the propositions that we're making, the sentences that we're forming are still following the same emotional expressive channels that we've evolved for millions of years to do. We're just using language now to do it. The language that we're using are emotional expressions almost always, and we're using them to convey the same kinds of emotionally expressive negotiation content that we always did. And it tricks you into thinking that, oh, I'm saying all these propositions like a logician. I'm saying A and then B and therefore C, QED. No, almost never that's what we're doing. We're engaged in persuasive arguments, conveying our confidence levels, pushing in reputation chips. That's what we're doing all day long in our regular life. That's what we're doing all day long on social media. That's the true language that's being spoken, whether you have flat affect or whether you've got your full affect there. It's really the true language that we all speak. Go get yourself a copy. Support freedom-loving scientists, independent researchers that the mainstream media is now dead against. And we will not get our word out about this big discovery, about the origins of emotions and what they mean, unless we have your help. And that was your science moment.